Hi guys, welcome to day one. I wanted to share some of the basics of creating double exposure in Photoshop. You might know it, you might not, but I wanted to share it anyways from my perspective because everybody does it differently. And I know some of you only do it in camera, and that's totally fine. There's also an app on the phone that I will introduce you to that anybody can, access um, that works quite similar to Photoshop, but also but in some ways a lot easier. And it's really fun to play around with it. And that's what we're here for, right? We're going to play with images. We're going to try different things, and we're going to realize that some of it doesn't work, and then some others work really well. And what this goal or what this workshop is really about is to help you define your vision for double exposure and also diptychs, and help you find your own, your vision when it comes to creating those images. And so I'm going to show you how I do things, but you might do things differently, and that's okay. What matters to me is so what kind of images are we choosing? What works well to combine? What looks interesting? Why are you choosing those images? And all those questions that we're going to explore. And sometimes the answer to all of those might be easier than you think, but we'll get to this in the next couple days. But really why we're also here is just trying to have fun with images. I love playing around with double exposure. I love experimenting. I love trying things. And sometimes sometimes I try things and I use like 10 different images, maybe on Photoshop, and nothing works. I mean, that doesn't happen very often, but can be frustrating. So, but then I play around and all of a sudden I get an effect that I didn't even expect. And that's the exciting thing about double exposure. And that's definitely also the really exciting part about doing it in camera uh, or on film. I mean, in film you even have less of a control. You're kind of letting go of the control. You're putting your own thoughts in it and then shooting the picture, and then it's a surprise, and that's sometimes really, really fun and awesome as well. So we're going to talk about all those things, but today it's just an introduction to the way I combine images in Photoshop. So I chose 4 different images. This is a portrait of a mother and daughter that I took. What I like about it and where I think it could work very well with double exposure is that there's a lot of negative space here, and then there's a contrast between the negative space and this, there's the window, the mirror. Often those things work well for double exposure. And then of course the almost silhouette, like people here, bodies. I could even make it more silhouette-like by turning it into black and white, and then lowering the exposure, increasing the contrast a little bit. And I might do that, but right now this is just a unedited photo that I found that I thought would work very well. And then I have this unedited version of just a quick picture I took from our beautiful morning glory flower vine wall that was in our house this past summer. And there was this was the early stage, but then all of a sudden we had all these blue glorious flowers all over, and it was just beautiful. Anyway, so I took this picture, and I love I think this could work very well because it's busy, but it's a pretty consistent pattern, and there's part here that is quite dark, and I kind of see this working with this picture. but I will show you how I do it and what I'm thinking. Then I have this portrait in black and white. This is a portrait of Audrey, the daughter of one of my friends. I've taken lots and lots of pictures of her. She was for a while, I would say, my muse. We have this kind of magical connection where I hardly say anything, and it's amazing to take pictures of her. If you have anybody like this in your life, it's a great thing. So I haven't taken pictures of her in a while, but I might ask again if I can do it. And then I have this picture of the meadow. Yeah, so it's just a simple picture, just black and white, nothing special really about it. So I was thinking when I saw this that I could combine it with this portrait. And the reason I like this portrait too is because, again, there's this negative space here. And then there's some texture here that will show up in the double exposure, but that to me is interesting. So these pictures are already kind of prepared. So usually I check the size, especially, yeah, I'll check the size of these pictures and make sure that they're about the same size. And I already did this with them, but I'm going to just show you and make sure that they're about the same size. If the height isn't exactly the same, that's fine. It's not a problem. And sometimes I don't worry about the size at all. And I'll show you a way for that as well. So I'm going to just try. This is very strange. Okay, so I'm going to just try to combine these two images by taking this layer, duplicate layer, and duplicate it into above the portrait. Usually you want to convert colors to a destination document with color profile that does not match the current RGB working space. Yes, I don't care right now. Okay, so here we have the two pictures above one another, and this is the top layer, this is the bottom layer. I'm going to create a layer mask, not a vector mask, just a layer mask for this one, and then I'm going to image, apply image. Okay, so this I already really like. The meadow is kind of in the background, the focus is still on the eyes, and there's a little bit of detail and contrast and different texture on this side. So this is actually already a really nice double exposure portrait, I think. One thing I would possibly experiment with is maybe moving the portrait picture more over here, but not necessarily. I kind of like where it is right now. Here I often play around with different blending options. Sometimes it's not necessary, like in this case it's almost not really necessary, but I'm going to show you anyway what happens. We're just going to go through the different blending options. So darken, I never use those for double exposure. You can kind of jump through these just never work, but it's either lighten or screen that I use the most. And I actually like screen again. Most of the time I use screen. I really like that it brings out the contrast a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, I want the focus on her face and on the eye. One thing that I could possibly think about is cropping the picture and really getting the focus on just the meadow and her face and kind of cropping this out. That's an option. I could also individually adjust the different pictures. So if I go to the meadow one, I'll go to image, adjustment. Let's see, I could go to curves. Curves is always good. I can see what happens. Not much right now. I go a little bit. Okay, that's nice. I'm increasing the exposure a little bit. It brings out the flowers a little bit more, which I really like as well. So we can leave it. I'll check this image as well, and I go to image adjustments. Maybe I'll play around with the contrast and brightness in this one. But yes, I like to go up with the contrast a little bit. I chose to create this in black and white because in the beginning, black and white double exposures are a little bit easier. There's just less to worry about. It's not so much about saturation or hue or different temperatures. It's just mostly about exposure, brightness, contrast, and you can play around in curves. And most of the time, black and white pictures just work very well for double exposure. So yeah, I really like this. I want to see what happens if I crop it. More like this. I really like this. It cuts out a little bit more of the busyness, and I like that it really brings out the white flowers here, and then the details of her what's it called? Freckles. I could only think of the German word. So I really like this. I would possibly spend a little bit more time on editing this, but maybe add a very subtle vignette, maybe add some grain, but other than that, I really like this. So I'm going to actually save it. Here. Okay. I can close this out. Okay, so now we'll see how this works. I'm not sure, but we're gonna try. So this is the portrait of the mother and daughter. And yes, I'm going to convert it into black and white. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing again because things just kind of change when you combine it with double exposure. I am going to go a little bit lower with the exposure here. But otherwise, I'm not going to change it too much. I'm gonna flatten the layer. And now I will check the size. I'm gonna crop it a little bit, but I like where the mirror is located more to the side here. I'm going to check the size. Oops, sorry. Check the size, image size. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the height, make the image a little bit smaller. Okay, let's just increase it, make it bigger so you can see it. And then I'm going to go over here. This image I will also convert to black and white. I just think it will work a lot better, even though, well, you can still see the flowers here, which is nice. Yeah, when I go increase the contrast a little bit, it brings out the flowers a little bit more. So I like that, but then other adjustments I will just save for later. I'm going to crop this so it fits better with the other picture. I think I have these 3 flowers here. I really like this detail of the vine, so I'm going to keep this in. And check the size. Make sure it's the same height. And save. Flatten the image. Okay. Whoops, too much. All right. Now, I think what I'm going to do, sometimes it's hard to decide whether to put this layer on top of this layer or the vine on top of the portrait. But I'm going to go with the vine on top of the portrait because I think that's just something I figured out that usually works better. The more busy picture goes on top of the more simple picture. Busier picture goes on top of the more simple picture. Not always the case, but I guess in most cases, I think that works better. So again, we're going to go to Layer, Duplicate Layer. I'm going to duplicate it right into here. It's asking me the same questions. That's okay. I'm not too worried about it. Here we go. We have both of the pictures. The vine is on top. I'm going to unlock this layer, but then I go back to the background copy here. Again, I'm going to go create a layer mask. Some people don't use this, but I feel like it makes it better for some reason. Some people use blending modes right away, and I've done that a few times, and I just feel like this is how I learned it, and it seems to work better. So I create a layer mask on the top layer, and then I'm going to image and apply image. So that's interesting. Actually, it kind of looks like beautiful wallpaper to me, but it's not quite the effect that I was going for. So I'm actually, well, let's see, I'm gonna go through the blending modes. See this. This is actually kind of cool. I like this. So there we go. It's a total surprise for me the way it turned out. I was not expecting this, but it's not a bad effect. But I definitely will show you what I was going for, and I think I may have just been wrong in telling you that I should put the vine over the portrait. I think I'm going to do it the other way around. So I'm going to go back to normal. I'm going to delete, whoops, what happened here? I'm going to delete this layer mask, delete layer mask, and I'm going to put this layer on top. I'm going to create another layer mask on this one. Go again to image, apply image. Yes, and this is much more of what I was thinking. So I'm going to adjust. I'm going to work here with the blending modes. I'm going to go to screen, lighten, and this is too much, this is too much. I think I again prefer screen. And then now I'm going to work with adjustments for each image. I'm going to use curves. There we go. I want to bring out the vine a little bit more, but also the contrast. Oops. That's too much. So I darkened this portrait picture quite a bit, but now you can't. I really like the subtleness of the portraits, but I do want a little bit more light in the windows. Go to image adjustments. Let's see. Yeah, just bring it out a little bit more. Contrast. I love the little sort of silhouette figures that are kind of hidden by the vine, and this is what I was going for. Much more so. Here I would probably, I like where it's positioned. I could try to move this layer down a little bit. Let's see what happens. Move this layer up a bit. Free transform. Yeah, that actually works really well too. I really like that. So I'm going to actually use this, and I'm going to flatten the image. So now I'm not going to adjust the individual layers. Now I'm going to work on it as a whole, as the whole, that this is, this is the whole picture. Now you can actually work a little bit more on the details. Save it. One thing that I would probably do here is go to Camera Raw. I would increase exposure a little bit, even go up with the contrast slightly more. Go down with the highlights a little bit, down with the shadows. Maybe up the clarity a little bit more texture. And I would definitely do a vignette here. Not too much. Not too much. And let's see, Never forget to feather. Here we go. The blacks a little bit. Now I'm just playing around and actually reduce the contrast. This works. This works well. Yeah, so now I actually decrease the contrast a little bit and increase the shadows. And now you can see a little bit more of the details here, which I like. So I'm gonna click OK. I'm still not too happy about this corner. I feel like it looks totally different, but it doesn't bother me too much. The one thing I could do is I could select this corner here, kind of a broad selection. I could modify and definitely feather quite a bit. Let's say 200, or I think definitely a little bit, even 400 probably be better. And then I'm going to work with the brightness here, with contrast. Yes, I like that. I like that better.